Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. As I mentioned to you in my little channel message that I just put up, I'm back in Scotland now, so I'm working through my stockpile of beer that I've got here at home. But when I always come home to Scotland, I always make a tradition of doing a Harviestoun review and a Williams Brothers review, because these are my two local breweries. So we're going to start off with the Harviestoun review, and this is actually a very special beer because you cannot buy this one in Scotland or in the UK either. So I actually brought this beer back from Australia, and I cheated a little bit. You cannot buy this beer in Scotland, and I bought this in Sydney, and this is the Old Engine Oil Engineer's Reserve, which is a version of their old engine oil, which is brewed up for the Americans to 9% from 6%. So it's a very special beer that I can't get in Scotland. I asked the brewery if they would give me one, but they said that they couldn't because of the license agreements and things like that. And I bought this beer in Sydney, so it could well be that this beer is perhaps the most travelled bottle of beer in the world at the moment, because it's obviously gone about 10,000, 11,000 kilometres over to Sydney. I've taken it from Sydney to Cairns, then Cairns to Japan, and then Japan back to Scotland. So this beer has probably travelled somewhere in the region of about 30,000 kilometres since it's been brewed. So it could well be the most well-travelled bottle of beer in the world at the moment, and I'm going to drink it, so yes. But anyway, as is usual with my beer reviews then, I'll take you through a very short history of the brewery. If you do want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward a few minutes. As I always say, the brewery website is in the video description for you below, along with a link to the other reviews that I've done from Harviestoun before, and there will be more reviews to come at you from Harviestoun in the very near future as well. So anyway, to tell you about this brewery, as I've mentioned to you before, Harviestoun is one of the oldest craft breweries in Scotland, and the brewery was founded back in 1983 by Ken Broker, and he was a home brewer, and he used to invite people round to his house to taste beer. And a few years later he decided that he actually wanted to brew for a living, and he converted an old farmsteading in Dollar into a small brewery in 1986. Now over the following few years they gradually added more beers to their repertoire, and then Ken decided to invest heavily in the brewery in 1989, installing the first professional equipment for the first time. Before he'd made a lot of his own equipment, but in 1994 they introduced their famous Schiehallion lager beer, and this beer went on to make a huge name for itself, and it's one of the most popular craft beers in Scotland today. Now the big break for the brewery came in 1996 when they won the Tesco Beer Challenge, and this resulted in the first bulk order for the brewery, and soon after they launched their new flagship beer, which was the Bitter and Twisted, and they began their first exports to the USA, and they do describe the Bitter and Twisted as being their flagship ale for export and things like that. It's a very nice beer, but personally I really like the Schiehallion one. But since the turn of the millennium, the brewery has become even more decorated, and they introduced the Old Engine Oil Porter, which is a very popular export beer. And as I've mentioned before, this guy has since been barrel aged to create the Olive Dove series, and also this guy here, which is a special release for the American market. In 2003 they moved from Dollar to their current facility in Alva, which is just a few miles down the road, and the brewery was actually sold to the Caledonian Brewery from Edinburgh in 2006, which was in turn bought by the Heineken Group in 2008. But when Heineken bought the brewery, they didn't want the Harviestoun Brewery, and so it was actually bought out by its current owners. So it's still an independent craft brewery, which is obviously the way we want our craft breweries in Scotland. And this is probably one of the most well-known Scottish craft breweries worldwide. A lot of people know Harvey the Mouse and the Harviestoun Brewery for all the different things. The Old Engine Oil probably is the most popular beer that these guys actually export, but they do export their Schiehallion and their Bitter and Twisted as well, and they're all beautiful beers. These guys don't actually brew all that many different types of beers, but their beer is of excellent quality. Just to list the other beers that you can get from these guys, as I mentioned, you've got the Schiehallion, which is a kind of really beautiful grapefruity flavoured lager. You get the Bitter and Twisted, Old Engine Oil, which is a porter. This guy here, which is the Old Engine Oil Engineer's Reserve, available only outside of the United Kingdom. You also have the Ridge, which is what they describe as a transatlantic pale ale, and then you've got the Ola Duve 12, 16 and 18 series, and you also get a few various special editions of the Ola Duve series. So without further ado, that's your kind of history of the Harviestoun Brewery. We'll get on to the actual tasting of this beer now. So to tell you about this guy is a 9% porter beer. It contains Galena, East Kent Goldings and Fugels hops, and it has a malt base of roast barley and oats. And essentially, as I mentioned to you, this beer is the old engine oil but brewed up to 9% for export strength. So let me just bring up the camera and let you have a little quick look at the artwork of this one. I believe they've changed the label of this fairly recently, so this is actually the older label. But I actually really like this one. I think it's done really nicely. They've changed, if you see their newer labels, they've changed how Harvey the Mouse looks, but I believe the bottle cap is actually still the same on their beers. But this is one of the older ones, and you can see on the side it actually says it's imported to South Australia. It's imported to Queensland and then distributed in Australia. Has a little bit of a description on the back. It says, "This intensely flavoured but incredibly smooth Engineer's Reserve is our fabulous old engine oil brewed up to 9% alcohol by volume. 3 hops varieties, grassy fugels, spicy Kent Goldings and fruity Galena are combined with roast barley, providing a slightly burnt toasted coffee character. Enjoy a bottle after dinner and take time to savour the earthy, hop, fruity flavours of this spectacularly dark, rich beer." So, should be a really awesome one. It's a 9% porter beer, and it's really cool to actually have taken this one back with me from Australia, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to get it, and I'm glad that I found it in Sydney. I need to give a shout out to John Shepherd in this video as well, who took me to the shop that had this, so really cool to find this one. But without further ado, let's get on and actually get tasting this beer. I love the Harviestoun beers, and it's really cool to find such a special one. So as you can see, a nice little bit of a smoky opening there, and we'll get this guy out and into the glass. You can see this just when you're pouring it, just how kind of oily and viscous this beer actually is. I'll just sugar it up and see if I can get a bit more of a head on it. You can see just a nice kind of beigey coloured head forming on this guy. But yeah, it looks an absolutely beautiful beer. As you can see, there's about a 3/4 or a half finger of a really kind of dark, tanny beige head on this guy. You can smell the chocolate on this and the kind of roasted coffee element just without even paying too much attention to it. But yeah, as you can see, really nice dark rosewoody coloured beer, nice kind of half finger kind of beige head. There's not really much visible carbonation in this, but I think it's just because the beer is so dark. You can see, if you just pay attention to the head, you can see some little bubbles just going up towards the bottom of the head. If I put my fingers behind it, you can't see through it, which is exactly what you'd expect. So in terms of the aroma with this one, very sweet smelling beer actually. You've got a lot of nice chocolate in this, but you've also got some really other kind of subtle notes as well. You've got a nice dark roasted brown sugar in there. It's almost a bit like treacle, but you can pick up a little bit of the sweeter caramel as well. It's definitely a really dark sort of licoricey, treacly brown sugar that's coming out of this beer. So you've got a nice treacle and caramel aroma in this guy. Some kind of sweeter dark chocolate in there as well. You can pick up just that dark kind of fruity sweetness that you get with dark chocolate. But there's definitely some roasted coffee in here. The coffee actually has quite an interesting one. It actually reminds me of Italian. It smells a little bit like Italian coffee, but that's maybe just something that's kind of come at me from somewhere a bit different. But the coffee is really interesting in this one. I'd almost be tempted to say there's a tiny little meat aroma in there, but that's just me. As I always say, take a little smell of your beers before you taste them, because it's really interesting. You get some really interesting things, and you can tune your nose quite well like that. But I'm no bloodhound, obviously. But yeah, you've got some nice dark fruit aromas in there too. And as you're sugaring it up, actually, if you sugar it up like this, you can get more of the fruity things out there. You're getting the nice kind of dark stone fruits, the plums, raisins and figs and things like that coming out of this one. It's absolutely beautiful. Really beautiful nose on this beer. So the Harviestoun beers always have a really good nose, so definitely take the time and just have a wee smell of these. But without further ado, this is the Old Engine Oil Engineer's Reserve from the Harviestoun Brewery in Alva, which is about 2 miles away from me in Scotland. My very first beer review since I returned here, so let's get stuck in. Slàinte. Oh man, that is absolutely beautiful. I don't know why they don't sell this in Scotland. It's a bit of a shame. This is probably the best beer I've tasted from these guys. And that's just from taking one sip, so it's a shame that they don't sell it to their kind of home customers. But yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. Much like the aroma, you've got a nice kind of dark malty character in there. It's treacle and caramel. The thing, just on the first sip, you're getting a nice kind of smoky element to it. just a nice kind of roasted, slightly smoky element just around the edges of the tongue there, and that's a character of the Fugo hop. The Fugo hop is a hop that I don't particularly like when it's put into golden ales and stuff, but when it's put into porters and used the way it's meant to be used, in my opinion, it's absolutely beautiful. In porter beers, the Fugo hop is excellent, and you can taste that in here. You get that smoky character, the sort of smoky, ashy flavour, and that complements the nice kind of chocolatey and coffee flavours in this beer really well, in my opinion. But yeah, you've got a really sweet, nice caramel and treacly element to the beer. It's more of a sweet caramel actually in comparison with the aroma. You get this nice sweet caramel, oily feel that just pushes towards the front of the palate there, but you've got a nice kind of roasted coffee element that just lies there, and you've got the smoky element from the Fugos as well, and it's kind of smoky around the edge of the tongue there. It's the Fugos hop is the one that's sitting just on the edge of the tongue, but there's a nice earthy character that just blankets the tongue as well. It sort of blankets right over the middle of the palate, but the Fugos hop is the one right on the edge of the tongue. But there's a nice oily caramel and dark chocolate sweetness to this one, and you just feel that oil bubble come towards the front of the palate of your mouth there, and it's really, really beautiful. You can taste the alcohol strength in this one as well. It kind of mixes in with the caramel as it does in some of these double IPAs and things like that. The caramel flavour is the one that really gives the alcohol strength away. It's 9%, so it is one of the heavier beers you'll find. But yeah, I'm getting just a little bit of the kind of stone fruits in here as well. So you're getting some plums, raisins and figs, but I'd say it's mainly a kind of figgy one. It's not quite as sharp as raisins or plums. It's more one of the kind of the sort of juicier, almost candied fruit flavour that you're getting in this one, but it's quite subdued because the caramel, I think the caramel is probably the most prominent component of the beer in this one. The caramel and the treacle are the thing that's really pushing the alcohol strength in the beer. But yeah, you've got a really nice dark roasted caramel element to this beer, and the Fugos hop. I was never, as I said, I'm never a great fan of the Fugos hop, but in this porter it just adds a really nice little element. You've got that nice smoky, ashy flavour just around the edge of the tongue there. A nice earthy character just blankets this one as well. And you can pick up a little bit of the spice as well, which is the East Kent Golding, as they said on the bottle. But this beer is absolutely beautiful. One of the best I've reviewed from the channel, I definitely say that, and it's one, if you really do get the chance, you guys in America and Australia and things who can get this beer regular are very lucky because it's beautiful. And the Old Engine Oil is a really good beer, and so are the Ola Duvs that I've tried before, but this one really, this would probably be my favourite beer that I've tried from these guys, so it's a shame that I can't get it in Scotland really. But yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. Everything you'd expect from a porter, but it's amped up a little bit more, and you do get a good bit of alcohol warmth out it. In terms of the mouthfeel with this guy, it's definitely full-bodied. The carbonation on it is very, very soft. It's almost non-existent actually. But there is obviously a tiny little bit of it there, but it's a very smooth, very oily flavoured beer actually, and the oily mouthfeel suits it very well because it gives you the good alcohol warmth and the nice flavours from the treacle and the caramel, and it also helps bring out the earthy character a little bit too, but it's got a nice roasted bitterness in it that just kind of sits there slightly on the edge of the tongue, but it does have a nice little bit of sweetness to it as well from the kind of dark chocolate flavours, and the kind of, that's where the dark chocolate flavours that are in the middle of the palate are where you're getting the kind of stone fruits, the kind of figs, and the figs are the most prominent part of the sweetness in this beer. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed my first beer review since I've returned to Scotland. It's been cool to have such a special Scottish beer that we can't actually buy here, so I hope you've enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comments section your own thoughts on this beer if you have tried it before. I'd be interested particularly to hear from those of you in America and Australia and what you actually think of this beer. But I thank you again for watching my beer reviews. I hope you've enjoyed it, and please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Very special beer review. I'm keeping the bottle for this one, but I will catch you soon with my next beer review. Cheers.